Thank you. Now, I sort of have the hard part here because Todd, being our fiscal officer, is responsible for keeping track of all our resolutions. Well, we are making a resolution that Todd does not know about on Tuesday at our next meeting. This is resolution for accommodation of Todd and Mary Ray, Heroes of Conservation. Whereas Todd and Mary were honored November 12th, 2023 by Protect Geauga Parks for their foresight and hard working in making a lasting contribution to conservation in Geauga County. And whereas Todd was former trustee of the Foundation for Geauga Parks and spearheaded funding for Observatory Park in Montville. And whereas Todd campaigned for and became township trustee when he saw developers buying property with no regard to conservation of watersheds, wetlands, or habitats. He, along with fellow trustees, were instrumental in acquiring what is now Nero Park on Bean Road, Scenic River Retreat, which is on Mayfield Road, both of which are under conservation. Although unsuccessful, Todd worked diligently to establish riparian setbacks in Munson Township. He also worked with the Cleveland Foundation to establish the Special Fund for Land Prevention in Munson Township. And whereas Todd and Mary have resided in Munson Township for many years and have a conservation easement on their property on Bass Lake Road, now therefore be resolved that it is the duty and the pleasure of the Board of Trustees to hereby recognize Todd and Mary on the behalf of all of Munson Township and extend the gratitude and congratulations for their dedication in preserving natural character of Geauga County as heroes of conservation. Let it be resolved and be recorded forever in a part of the permanent record of Munson Township from this story forward. We will vote on this Tuesday. It should be unanimous.
I'd like to call Tammy Gingrich up to the podium to give the words that we skipped a little earlier today.
I don't need the stool.
That's exactly my son.
Okay, well, this just gave me time to recover from Dan's speech. I don't know what's left to say, but I will tell you, I'm not going to tell you where my tattoo is. You know, I have had an interest in nature since I was a very young child, probably since I could walk. And my parents, both my parents, encouraged me and fostered my interest in nature from as long as I can remember, whether it was bringing snakes into the house or having aquariums full of pond critters or raising baby bunnies. I mean, you name it, I did it. And my mom was right there to encourage me to do it. And, you know, now that I look back, I think she was probably living some of her love of nature through me. Because back when she was growing up, having a career in nature probably wasn't an option. So I lucked out in being able to capitalize on her love of nature coming through me. And speaking of my mom, she turned 95 in September, and she is here with me. I'm just so glad that she's here with me. Smoker. I grew up in Geauga County. I went to West Geauga schools. I went to Westwood, and I went to West Geauga. And in my junior year, I walked into my biology class and had none other than Bob McCullough as my biology teacher. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. I remember the very first day of class, he started off with a slide projector, not a PowerPoint, we didn't have those back then. And he decided to just show the class pictures of animals, plants, insects, birds. He said, now you just yell out if you recognize something or know something. We're just going to go through these slides and you tell me if you know them. And I remember this one slide came up and a bunch of students yelled out, thistle, thistle. And I raised my hand and I said, no, that's teasel. And after class that day, Bob McCullough came right up to me and he introduced himself and he got to know me and he took me under his wing from that Teasel identification, and he really changed my life. He, every spring for many, many years, he and I and a couple other people would go take a day and go up to McGee Marsh and go birding. We spent a whole day there. It was something I looked forward to every spring. In 1983, he involved me in my very first Christmas bird count for Geauga County. And I realized this past July when I did it that I was doing it for my 40th year. So I'm still carrying that tradition on for him. My parents were members of the Holden Arboretum, so growing up, I spent most of my time there. And my mom would drop me off with my best friend, Janet, who's here today too. And she and I would just spend the whole day there, hiking and playing in streams and catching frogs. But Bob McCullough introduced me to the Geauga Parks. I really wasn't too familiar with Geauga Parks because I spent so much time at Holden's, but he would take me around and drive me around and show me all the parks. And I remember one time he said, "Oh, I've got to show you this new property we just bought." And he took me to this place with a big lake and he says, "We're going to call this Walter C. Best." And we walked out on the point and he goes, "Someday we're going to have a waterfowl blind out here." And for many of you who've been there, it's there. So, that was my introduction to the parks. He told me, "Now listen, when you get out of college, you come right back here and you work for our parks." And so I went to Ohio Northern. I came back and I had this interview in this ramshackle trailer at Big Creek Park from this guy right here who introduced me, Dan. He gave me an interview in 1989 and I got the job and he became my boss. And I have learned so much from Dan, I can't even tell you. Maybe I don't have quite his jokiness or his, but he has really taught me a lot through the years, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And I'm so glad that we've remained such good friends since retirement as well. So I did get a job with the Geauga Park District. I spent my first 15 years as a program naturalist, doing programs, leading hikes, going to schools. Then I was moved to the natural resource management where I did research projects for the next 12 years. Like Dan mentioned, I won't go over those again. And then for probably my last 4 years, I was moved back into the naturalist department where I retained all my research projects, but I also did programs, and what I did was combine my research projects into programs and did presentations for the public, which I really, really enjoyed that a lot. So after 31 years, I retired. And I specifically want to thank my brother Paul Loker and his wife Ann for being literally my biggest cheerleaders. They live in Worcester, but they have encouraged me and supported me throughout my entire career. They have driven up from Worcester numerous times to see my programs, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I also want to thank my husband, Phil. Many of you might not realize Phil was Geauga Park District's very first natural resource manager. And a lot of the trails that you hike at all our parks were actually designed and laid out by him. And Phil retired 12 years before I did. And so you can imagine he had things at home just how he liked them. And so when I retired 3 years ago and came into his private life at home, with all my projects and my hobbies and my messes, he's put up with a lot, but I've learned so much from him too, and he's been such a huge support to me throughout my career. So this award means so much to me. It's kind of bringing everything full circle for me, and even though I'm retired, I completely plan on continuing to educate you and keep you up to date on all the projects that I'm involved with. So thank you so much for this.
Yes, please. As one short person, it was all right.